Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Posner, and welcome to another installment of the Conquer Your Inner Critic Interview Summit. Today's guest is Chris Butsch. Chris is a former workaholic turned happiness expert and the author of the book, The Millennial's Guide to Making Happiness. Before we get into the meat of the interview, I just want to read a little bit about Chris. So here we go, in Chris's own words. Like many others, I found happiness early in life by giving up my pursuit of financial wealth. But unlike others, I didn't stop at finding one or two things which made my life fulfilling and joyful again. I wanted to holistically understand happiness and pass along what I'd learned, so no one else in my generation would fall into the same pitfalls as I did 2 years ago. After graduating from Vanderbilt University a semester early, I eagerly dove headfirst into adult world by accepting a lucrative job with Epic Health Systems as a project manager. 2.5 years later, I'd achieved many of our society's traditional benchmarks of success. Fast car? Check. Penthouse apartment? Check. Financial freedom to travel, eat, and drink whatever I wanted? Check, check, and check. So it may come as a surprise that in June of 2014, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. Clearly, I was doing something wrong. So Chris, before we get to where you are now and your post-university career, I want to just start out by getting a little bit of a history of you. So how'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Jim. Happy to be here. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, Southern boy. My parents got separated when I was about in 5th grade. But they're both remarried to people who are much better for them. So I like to say that I have 4 loving parents now. Other than that, childhood for me it's all about performance. Parents, high performers, went to best Atlanta private schools. I followed right in their footsteps. Went to Vanderbilt University, designed my own major, graduate early. I wanted to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and hopped startups for a while. And then eventually landed a job at Epic Health Systems up in Madison, Wisconsin. So for me, it was about I don't want to say blind, but the just really driven pursuit of happiness through study, through hard work, and through wealth. And that, I think, in my brain, I just justified the equation of, if I work my tail off from 3rd grade through the rest of my life, then the happiness will just fall in place. Hard work always equates to happiness. And found out that was not the case. When I was at Epic, I was just working my tail off, working 69 hours a week. I actually got a couple cavities because for 2 reasons, I was drinking too many energy drinks, and I frequently fell asleep on my laptop without brushing my teeth. But yeah, just working my tail off, trying to build my American dream. And if adult world is a marathon that requires endurance and tact, I was sprinting the first mile out of the gate. And when you can't sprint that long. So, and about 1.5 years into my tenure at my job, I started to feel more numb. I cared less about things. I didn't care about, I'd still go out with friends, but I'd drink more, and I just felt my emotions were just numbing. I didn't really feel as sad or as happy anymore. So I sensed something was probably wrong. But I kind of wrote it off as I've had too much caffeine. I'm just tired. This is part of being an adult. Or maybe my childlike sense of wonder has died. So something happened that made me realize something is seriously wrong. And that was when I read an email that I got by accident that told me that my grandfather was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And in response to reading that my lifetime hero was about to pass away, I felt nothing. I didn't care. But then that night when I was driving home from work at 9 o'clock at night, I started crying so hard I had to pull over on the side of the road. And it wasn't because I was thinking about my grandfather. It just happened. I was just broken. So I make the analogy that if our emotions are like a beautiful symphony orchestra, it's not just high notes all the time. Life will play ups and downs. So if life is like an orchestra, depression was like my conductor walking off stage. So my emotions didn't know when to play. They played at the wrong times, and some never played at all. So I knew something was definitely wrong at this point. So I went to see I call them my therapy squad. I saw a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, and a therapist. And my diagnosis was acute clinical depression. And eventually they all put me in front of the psychiatrist, who gave me 5 milligrams of Wellbutrin and told me that I could come back in 6 months. We'd probably double the dosage then. So I did some research that night into Wellbutrin, and then that expanded into antidepressants as a whole. And I realized that, I found 2 statistics that made me completely change the way I think about happiness and flush my antidepressants down the toilet. And they were that antidepressant use has risen by 400% in the past 20 years. And in that same time, America hasn't gotten any happier. So I learned that society's answer for my unhappiness doesn't work. So I asked myself, what does? What does a happy life really mean? How can I, as a now very confused 24-year-old, build a happy life now that I've kind of achieved everything I thought was happiness, and look where I am, flushing antidepressants down the toilet? So I continued my research. I started looking into positive psychology, the things that science has been discovering about the nature of happiness for the past 50 years. I read every self-help book I could find. I talked to psychologists. I talked to swamis and monks and millionaires, and a hobby became an obsession. By 6 months in, I'd gone from being handed a bottle of pills to the happiest I've been in my entire life. So I came to a turning point in my happiness career, as I call it, because I thought, this is great. I can get back to work and continue kicking butt. So I met with some friends. Again, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. I met with my work buddies, and the standard unit of beer in Madison isn't a glass or a pint. It's a 2-liter glass of boot. So we're passing 6 liters of beer in 3 containers that we're passing around the table of about 8 people. And I kind of took the mic and I told my friends, hey guys, I just wanted to let you guys know, if you found me kind of distant or unfun for the past 6 months, it's because I've been really depressed. I went through kind of an episode, but don't worry about me, because I'm way happier now. I'm actually the happiest I've been in my entire life now. So things are good, pass the boot. And one by one, after that conversation, everybody at that table came up to me and said, not congratulations, not it's glad to have you back. It was, how'd you do it? I think I'm depressed. What was it that you found that turned you into this depressed workaholic, into this super happy guy we've never seen before in 6 months? And I started giving them kind of informal advice about the things I'd read, the things I'd tried, what did and what didn't work about building happiness. And that became an obsession. I felt so purposeful helping people in my generation. And I realized that I started talking to people younger and younger. And I was 25 at the time. I was talking to 19, 20-year-olds as well, and realized that a lot of them are still chasing the things that I achieved that sent me into the pits of depression. Just the wrong things, putting aside friends and family and compassion in order to chase down financial security and the car and the apartment and the likes on Facebook, things like that. So I realized that while I had kind of climbed out of the chasm of depression, I was now staring down an entire generation about to fall into it. So I decided that my purpose from then on would be to help these millennials build happiness and build a happy life in their 20s. Don't wait until you're 55 to figure out you've been doing it wrong. Let's start doing it right today. And that created a worldwide journey to learn as much as I possibly could about the nature of happiness and convert it into a fun to read format for young people so we can all start building happy lives together.
Awesome story, really fascinating. And I can relate on so many levels. I went through a difficult time also, and I had an anxiety attack, and I Same thing. Slowly started to tell friends of mine, and every one of them, I told them, same thing. I had a panic attack 2 years ago, or I'm really worried about this, that, and the other thing. So very, very relatable story, no doubt. So your travels, can you tell us a little bit about what you learned on your travels? I know you have some pretty interesting stories.
Yeah, for sure. So to build some context, I decided I should leave my job and just study happiness full time, because my ultimate goal was to find a good way to get this message out to as many people as possible. And I couldn't really do that as a workaholic IT project manager working 80 hours a week.
Can I actually interject there for one quick second? So how difficult was that at this point? Was it difficult to leave your job as somebody who, growing up, and obviously this is what you thought the goal was, is to work hard and get the car, get the apartment, get some financial security. I mean, I felt the same way, so I can relate. So how hard was it for you to say, you know what, I've hit a crossroads, I need to leave my job and move on to this project almost?
Yeah, no, it was extremely difficult on so many levels. I wasn't sure I'd have parental support. The Butsch family men, my grandfather is a renowned cardiologist. My dad is a senior VP at a bank. And here we have the next one in the lineup who had gotten an expensive Vanderbilt degree in engineering and had a job where he was making amazing money and rising very quickly, suddenly coming to Christmas to say, yeah, I really hate this track I'm on. I'd rather quit and study happiness instead. But thankfully, and to the endless credit of my parents, they're extremely supportive of that. And I think what they saw that won their support was I wasn't passionate about my work at Epic, but I'd found something to be passionate about. And I think at that point I'd proven to them that if I could be that successful at something I hated doing, maybe it would be okay to give me a chance doing something that I love doing, which is helping other people. And even though I wouldn't be on this lucrative path to, may not be married by age 28, living in a 5-bedroom house with, 3 kids, I was abandoning that track to go something very experimental. They were supportive because they saw it made me happy. So parental support was there. Finances, that was a trick, because suddenly giving up that paycheck and just having it not appear on payday, it's really scary feeling. So big part of my work was cutting out all of my unnecessary overhead to make it a financially stable decision, and a lot of planning too. I decided I wanted to travel the world and see as many young people as possible, anyone who would talk to me about happiness, but I decided I would go physically to all the cheap countries and then do my interviews online just like this with all of the, the dollar doesn't stack up to the Danish currency, so I'm not going to go to Denmark. But I can talk to the Danish millennials on Skype for free, so I did. And ended up going to 5 cheap countries. Went to Hong Kong, Vietnam, China, Mexico, and Cozumel, which is part of Mexico. So learned a tremendous amount traveling. I had been on vacations where, my mom is a travel writer, so and very rarely she'll get the opportunity to bring the family along. So I've been on it would be considered like a very nice luxury cruise, but I was never happy going on those things because I wasn't learning anything. I was just consuming. And now I'm in a position where, I spent a month in China for barely $2,000, but I was learning so much as I was going. So it felt such an enriching mental experience. And to have the opportunity to talk to people around the world and say, hey, I'm from America. We're not doing so great on happiness. What is it that makes Chinese people happy? What is it that makes Mexicans happy? And everyone has a slightly different answer. So I thought, if I can take all this and just put it all together, there's advice here that's not hard to follow, but we just don't, because our visions of happiness have been skewered by the media and the wrong messaging. And there are some really wholesome, fantastic, effective ways to build happiness in our 20s that we're just not all leveraging quite yet. And maybe we're leveraging 1 or 2 of them, but once we leverage all of them, life just becomes this huge, bountiful, fun, still challenging, but much more enjoyable experience.
So what are some of those happiness items that you're talking about leveraging?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it would be like 100 things, but it boils down to like 12 things. It's building a life around compassion, gratitude, friendships, relationships. That's really the number one happiness currency right there, is the quality of your relationships. And that's based on a lot of qualitative evidence I found around the world, but also Harvard did a 75-year-long study of hundreds of people to find what the best way to build happiness is, the number one indicator of a happy life, and it's the quality of your relationships. And so there's also mental, physical health. There's constant challenge. There's constant learning, basically enriching your mind with this mental nourishment, and trying to balance that diet of mental junk food with mental nutrition. And when I say mental junk food, I mean things like anything that gets you a cheap dopamine hit that doesn't have any lasting effect on your well-being. So things like Facebook likes, French fries, beer, video games, browsing YouTube, watching meaningless content, stuff that's definitely fun and has its place, but it's just treat it like a French fry. Have a small plate of it max once a day, and remember to eat your broccoli and your baked chicken.
I love it. That's great. So in your travels, I know you have talked a little bit about a story with some Buddhist monks and some mindfulness. So can you, since I'm a mindfulness practitioner and teacher, can you enlighten us to that story a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. So I got to the point in drafting my book, where I thought I need to say something about meditation. I'm so fascinated by this concept, and I see it picking up steam. I should try and write about it. So I tried some of the apps. I think Calm was one of them, or Quiet, and Headspace, popular one. And I'm enjoying it, but I'm thinking I'm not really getting anywhere with this stuff. And now I'm in a bit of a tight spot because I have nothing to write about. So I thought I need to go talk to the Jedi Masters of meditation. So I Googled a good monastery to go to. And actually, by chance, I ran into my kind of bohemian, estranged step cousin who had just gotten back from a monastery in Mississippi, of all places.
Wow.
When you think about where I can learn Vietnamese Buddhist meditation, you think Mississippi.
Who knew?
Who knew? So I'm worried it's going to be some fancy process that I'll have to apply or whatever. Nope. The monks are totally chill, and I just called them, and they operate their monastery like an Airbnb. Like, yeah, just come hang out with us. Give us enough money that we can feed you. But yeah, just come hang out and do whatever, come to as many of our activities with us as you like. So it's $40 a night, and that gets you 3 square meals and a warm bed. And they have kind of like a dorm style living. And of course, it's a bit like imagine your preconceptions of a monastery infused with a summer camp. So they've got like a beautiful statue of Buddha with lotus blossoms coming out, and then a basketball hoop behind him. So if I had mentioned the name, it's called Magnolia Grove Monastery, Mississippi, in Batesville. So I get there, and the monastery gets hit by this huge snowstorm. It's covered in ice. And I get there about 9 o'clock and learn very quickly that 9 to 9 is noble silence, which means nobody talks. So I show up and no one's talking to me. The monks just point to the schedule on the wall, and they point to my bed, and then everyone just disappears. And they're very sweet, and they kind of smile and nodded, but they wouldn't talk to me for the next 12 hours. So the first morning, I see that we have meditation in the meditation hall at 5 o'clock. So after about 3 hours of tortured sleep, I put on my flip-flops and my sweatpants, and I shuffle over to the meditation hall. And I pop a squat next to one of the monks, hoping I'm not stealing Brother Harmony's favorite spot. And I they rang a bell. So I got my meditation position. I'd done my research. I closed my eyes, and there's not a sound in the room for the next hour. I just have to face my inner thoughts for a full hour. So if you think about right now what it would feel like, I mean, you're a practiced meditation expert, but for someone listening who's never just faced an hour of silence,
Oh yeah,
you go mental. It's not a calming experience. So I'm getting just hit with all these mental unread emails like, hey, remember that time you really screwed up with that girl at formal? Let's go through a play-by-play right now. And then just garbage like, I think Robert Downey Jr. is really overrated. And why do I keep going to Taco Bell? Just all this garbage that came front and center. And it was just out of control. The Buddhists call it monkey mind. And I totally agree. It was like a monkey just banging a cymbal in my brain for an hour. Well, I say an hour, but it's more like half an hour. And what happened was I felt this staggering, beautiful sensation that all was clear. I'd finished checking my unread emails and there was nothing. And I got to enjoy the sound of the wind blowing and the snow outside. And I felt the sensation of almost physical movement and calm and tranquility. I'd never felt it in my entire life. And Dan Harris, the author of 10% Happier, he likens that feeling when meditation clicks to the highest high of his life. And that's a guy who's done a lot of drugs. So take it as a hero of mine, Dan. And that was the moment I realized, half an hour into my first meditation, I realized I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and try to get as many other people to do it with me.
great. Yeah, no, that's daunting, though, to say the least, to have that as one of your first experiences without really having, you didn't really have any instruction on meditation prior to that, really?
I read Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Happiness. It's a really short read. It's kind of like the Buddhist monk handbook. So It gives you an insight into all of their mindfulness exercises. So I knew how to sit. I knew how to breathe. Thich Nhat Hanh, or Tay as I call him, Tay did not prepare me for just a mental tempest of crap I had to deal with. But I knew the very basics. But I think it's going, your very first unguided meditation, I think, is like going downhill on a bike without training wheels. And I hadn't even really done the training wheels. So it was terrifying but invigorating. And as soon as you get your balance, it's an unbelievable experience.
That's a great analogy, actually. I like that. As soon as you get your balance, it's great that you did find your balance, no doubt. You do hear stories of people that go on extended retreats that might not have so much experience meditating and kind of losing their proverbial minds sometimes. So that's great. So can you take us through so back to the meditation. So you have a daily practice. So what does your daily practice consist of now?
Yeah, so I have a regimen. I want to mix. My end goal after meditation is not only the calm, but also the focus to continue working really, really productively. So I do a combination of mindfulness with tritaka, or candle gazing. So I sort of vacate my mind of any focus first for mindfulness, and then light a candle and I stare at it to resharpen my focus. So I get that combination of the clarity to know what to do, and then the focus to get it done.
How long do you do each? How long does that ritual or practice take?
Yeah, I usually do about 10 to 15 minutes of mindfulness and 6 minutes of candle gazing. It changes, and I think I don't think personally meditation is like time on a treadmill where you kind of feel the same after a certain length every time. I think a lot of it's dependent on what's on your mind at a certain time. So if I'm really stressed out, like if I actually had a fight with my now ex-girlfriend, and then I just had to walk out of the room and meditate, and I had to meditate for a while to get that calm and clarity back. Days where I'm really stressed out, it's longer. Days where I get a lot of exercise or meditation in other forms, it might be a little shorter.
Gotcha. I concur. There are days where it's really difficult to sit and you feel like you're not getting anything accomplished and you're not getting anywhere. And other days it seems like you can kind of just sit and get right into it and have a bit of a sense of bliss and clear your mind and when you're done, you just feel like you're ready to go and fully focused, no doubt. So what other tools are in your kind of happiness toolbox that you use throughout the day?
Sure. So I always remember that if I'm making plans with friends, for example, I remember the basics of the building blocks of a happy life. So I'll give you an example of a Saturday I would have had 3 years ago versus one I have today with all this knowledge and how those look differently. 3 years ago, Saturday, wake up hungover at 11:53, go make some bacon, play video games for probably 3 or 4 hours. Maybe meet up with the driving club and just drive like a jackass out in the Wisconsin countryside and get a cheap thrill. Then that night, more alcohol, go out, drink boots, talk to girls, and come back home, sober up a little bit, play some video games, pass out on my face. Or face down on the bed, right? Horrible sleeping position, never do it. So let's compare that to Saturday today. Saturday is wake up at a reasonable hour, 9:30 or 10. Then go to a philanthropy event until about noon or 1. Try to bring my friends to that. If I can't get them there, I come home, I make a healthy lunch, and then in the afternoon, I exercise. I get on my bike. I work on this tan I've been working on for 26 years. And it's a work in progress. Then at night, my nights used to be, go out, drink, spend money. And now who can I bring into my home? I like to cook for people. So cook my famous rapture burgers, as they've been called, because they signal the rapture. I make these burgers and bacon grease that my friends are in love with.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So cook a new recipe for friends. Have 10 people in my house just enjoying a good time. And then go to sleep at a reasonable hour. So everything I realized I wanted to have 3 years ago on a Saturday, like I wanted to feel pleasure. I wanted to just feel alive and feel not happy really, but I was just chasing the next high, driving fast, eating bacon, waking up, drinking too much, obsessively checking Facebook, playing video games for 4 or 5 hours on end. And then now I realize that those highs were just a replacement for true happiness, which is not only feels like a high, but it lasts longer and you build more relationships that way. So that's why my new Saturdays are based around that principle. How can I build a relationship today? How can I help people today? How can I learn something today? And that doesn't mean going Amish and cutting Facebook and beer and video games out of your life. It just means creating a balance. Again, that if your happiness is a plate of food, it can't all be French fries. To go back to my analogy, you've got to have your broccoli and your baked chicken with your French fries. And now that's what my Saturdays are like. They're kind of a more nutritious meal of happiness.
It sounds like what you've done is you've really kind of taken yourself off of this kind of autopilot mode where you're just kind of flying and there's no real awareness of your thoughts and your feelings. And now, even your emotions, you're just waking up, playing video games, not really paying attention to other thoughts and feelings, going out and drinking, and now with your new lifestyle, it's like you're off autopilot, and it's almost like you're paying attention, and you have a higher level of awareness of things, and things aren't just buried.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a term, drift, often thrown around in self-help circles, and that's what I was doing back then. It was make money, feel high, make money, feel high, rinse, repeat, and that's just not a long-term lifestyle that anyone can lead and actually be happy. So I'm often asked, you're this happiness guru, you write about it. Are you just happy all the time now? Far from it. Even when the book came out, the book coming out, my Kickstarter being successful was such a happiness high for me. And when I came back down from it, I kind of had like this ironic postpartum depression about my happiness book already being out. And the difference is I know how to deal with it now. I'm kind of like, when my car breaks down, I don't have to take it to the dealer anymore and let them fix it behind closed doors. I can fix it myself. If I feel down one day, I can close my eyes and ask myself why. Sometimes it's as simple as I'm just dehydrated. I didn't have enough water today, and my brain is reacting poorly to that. Some days it's more complex. I think I'm upset because my relationship isn't really working. And then you just ask yourself, why? So it's a combination of the voluntary self-diagnosis combined with the right steps to get on the path to healing. And the only reason I'm happier than some other people my age is because I'm further along on that path of healing, and I, for lack of a better term, I just know how to fix it when I feel really sad or depressed.
That's powerful to be able to have that ability to fix that. No doubt. I think it's part of the human experience to have these ups and downs, and to be able to recognize that you are feeling a bit down and to know how to rectify the situation is very, very powerful. So Chris, really amazing, fascinating stuff. Do you have any new projects coming up?
Yeah, I do. So what I've got going on right now, I've got, of course, the book. It's called The Millennial's Guide to Making Happiness, and that is available on Amazon. I also give meditation workshops. I infuse a lot of science into what I talk about. So we'll learn how to meditate. There'll be a spiritual element. We'll light some candles, but also I tell you about the science for why it works. And then lastly, I do speaking engagements as well. So I've found that for me, what's right for me to get my message out, the most intimate, effective way to really reach people is through speaking. I'm kind of weird in that other people are terrified of public speaking. They say it's their number one fear. I love getting in front of people and speaking and telling my story. And I've also found it's the most effective way I can let millennials know that if you are suffering silently, there are ways to fix it. And I will tell you about it in front of a room of hundreds of people. So it's the book, meditation, speaking, and I've got a few other things in the work that I'm just not ready to talk about yet.
Fair enough. So if you're interested in what Chris is doing, and it is very interesting stuff, it's chrisbutsch.com. That's Butsch, B-U-T-S-C-H. And thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Really appreciate it. Very insightful.
It's a sincere pleasure, and I absolutely respect what you're doing as well. So let's keep on pushing the happiness revolution.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.